Hey everyone, thanks for joining. Apologies, I was 1 minute late. I thought I was actually in there, but I wasn't. Had to get a reminder from Rick. Rick, thanks for keeping me on point there. That's great.
Sure, no worries. Glad you
Oh,
could join us, Ian.
thanks very much. So yeah, so I'm actually the Centrical representation on today's call, and I was the one that was late. Okay, but yeah, so I think we get started with quite a packed agenda today. So we would encourage people to put questions in the chat. We do have, like I said, packed agenda, a lot of questions, a lot of talking points, a lot of great topics to discuss. Obviously, the panel that we've got is super strong. I'm just here to kind of, you know, be the invigilator, if you like, and make sure that the conversation flows. A little bit of background on myself. I'm Ian Chappell, the director of consulting for Centrical's international business, which is everything other than North America. And I get the pleasure to kind of, host these webinars and speak to, titans of the industry like Paula and Rick. Obviously, the reason why we're here today is to discuss what we think is going to be really happening for contact centers from, next year onwards. And the great thing with these is that it's always good as well to make these predictions, but we'll discuss later how, we've done this in the past and then we actually ask our contributors and previous predictors to give their feedback on where their predictions landed. As a thank you for attending as well, we will be doing a raffle for a $50 Amazon gift card. And what we're also doing, and this is the kind of final, bit of housekeeping, if you like, is we're doing something special today to make the webinar even more valuable to the people that have attended. So obviously, we know that you guys are all very busy and you're giving up an hour of your time or 45 minutes of your time today to sit and have a good discussion with the guys. But what we are doing is at the end of the session, we'll give you a link to share your key takeaways and be featured in an article that we're going to be creating on this topic. We'll also post it on LinkedIn and tag you. So, you'll get a really nice exposure and it'll literally take a couple of minutes. You'll also get personalized social media posts and graphics to share with your network, which will be inspired by your comments. And you've got up until the 12th of December to do that. Okay. Again, completely optional, but if something piques your interest and you want to give feedback, then please do. Okay. So a little bit about Centrical. Before we get started, obviously, this will not be a Centrical sales pitch. You'll be pleased to know we've got minimal slides, but Centrical is a performance intelligence platform, and what we're all about is orchestrating performance and growth while making sure that we keep kind of frontline employees and team leaders and supervisors at the center of everything that you do as an organization. We're very big on keeping the guys at the center, but also helping with that kind of bottom up execution of anything that's being driven top down. And as you can see from some of the logos there, that we generally work with large scale CX organizations and standard driven consultant businesses like COPC, like Capita, who we're really pleased to have on the call today. But before we get started, we do want just a little bit of an icebreaker. And this icebreaker is, what is the funniest or weirdest thing you've asked AI to do? So if you could just give it a minute, we'll pop those in the chat, please, if you could. And while we're doing that, Rick, Paul, have you got anything that you've done weird or wonderful with AI?
This feels like therapy, Ian, and we haven't even started. What's weird for one is not weird for another. I do many
Exactly.
wild and wonderful things with AI, to be fair. I use it a lot, as you would expect me to. I use it a lot. But I will say, when I get little lights on my car, I don't trust the lights, and I have to determine how severe is this? Do I need to act on this now or kind of stretch it a little bit longer? So I ask AI just how serious it is and when I need to go to the garage. So that's what I do,
Very cool.
among many other things, but that's particularly helpful in my life.
Yeah, I thought I was using it really well when I told ChatGPT what I had left in the fridge when the wife was away and to create me a recipe. And that recipe is now on constant weekly rotation for our for our dinners, which is fantastic, but it's probably not that weird. Rick, yourself, anything
That was
you've done?
impressive, Ian. I don't feel like I have anything weird. It's been more about using it. For example, I like to travel, and if I'm visiting a new place, using AI to help me figure out where are the places I should be visiting or spending time in, or how to get in there or so. So that's been the closest thing to something where
Yeah.
it's a little different in the personal life. But no, I haven't done anything weird with it yet.
Oh well, this time you might get some inspiration today. I mean, we've got
Sure.
one here from Debbie Webbs who's asked it to create a letter from Santa, which is good. I
It's a
Nice.
imagine
great
that's
idea.
that's for the kids to keep them in check. I'd imagine. I'm just guessing. And
Yeah.
Ashley During is I asked it what prompts I should be using with AI, which is a very good one. And we've seen this internally. Actually, one of our guys is really big on using AI to tell them how to use AI, which is fantastic.
Hope he's not your
Okay.
chief AI officer. That'd be very worrying.
Yeah. No comment. Okay. Next slide, please, Diana. Okay, so I asked what name it would like to have. We agreed on Laura. That is also my wife's name. I will not tell her that she is some sort of sentient robot being that sits on the internet. Okay. A couple of intros. I mean, I've done my intro. Paula, first of all, that you give an introduction, please.
Sure. Thanks for having me today. Paula Kennedy Garcia. I'm the Chief Client Officer at Capita, Capita Experience, and I oversee all of our clients in the UK and Ireland and help them on their journeys of AI and where they're heading with those strategies.
Great. And Rick.
Rick Zayas with COPC, Global CX Consultancy. I serve our major clients in the North American region and lead them on strategy or transformation engagements.
Perfect. So yeah, what I loved about this panel when we're coming up with this is that we've got people from either side of the pond, if you like. So
Mm-hmm.
we've got
Mm-hmm.
different cultures, different way that our industry works. But there are a lot of similarities. But we've also got Paul with a really strong operations background, and Rick, you've got the operations background, but also you're moving this into the consultant space as well, which is great. Okay, let's get started because we've got 37 minutes left, which is going to go by in a flash. I want to start with a really open question, and I think this is one that people are still kind of kicking the can down the road a little bit. Is everyone said or are still saying that AI is going to replace our beloved frontline colleagues and agents? Is that a myth or reality? Let's throw that over first of all. Let's throw it over to Paula.
I mean, I think it's mostly a myth. That's a
Yeah.
very big word when I say mostly. You said there at the start about how you're looking back, what people predicted last year, but go back, 2 years, 3 years when generative kind of raised its head. And at that time, it was all chaos broke out. There was no need for call centers. There's no need for customer success teams. It'll all be automated. And so that from that perspective, it's definitely a myth. I think it's absolutely reshaping the role of the agent, but it isn't removing it. And I think what we'll see is something that we've predicted for a long time as more and more gets automated on the simplistic end and the repetitive side, that shift towards a higher skilled, higher value conversation whilst AI does the other tasks. Absolutely what happens. So it's reimagining and it is reshaping what we are as a CX industry. And I get really excited about that. But I think for me, what that's really driving is actually making our agent, the human, more central in the value chain because it gives them better tools and better insights in real time to handle those conversations. So I just think the landscape has changed.
Perfect. And I think that's something that I'm seeing as well when we speak to our customers as well. Is that they just want to give a little bit more of value to their people, which will then give more value to the customer and the service that's being provided. Rick, are you getting anything from when you're going in with your customers? Are you hearing anything, or are you getting them to put the brakes on with maybe things that they want to try and bulldoze in, or anything that you want out of that one?
From the AI kind of taking over the agent
Yeah,
role, is that
yeah.
okay? Gosh, that's there's a multi-layer question there, Ian. So sometimes we do see this. I liked your word there, bulldozing tactic, although that's not how an organization might describe it. Where there's been an initiative to invest and deploy AI. And we have heard, we being the company or so, that it can do A, B, and C, and we go ahead and roll that out, right? And that usually does not deliver the results that are intended. And it can be frustrating for the agents as well. I'm completely on board with Paula on this, that this is more about a continual transition of the role as AI evolves in its capabilities and becomes more collaborative in how we deliver service, right? So I think that we're still in that transitional period because we're still trying to figure out everything that AI can do really well. And as we transition with AI and evolve its use, we're also transitioning the role of the agent. And I should also say the role of the team manager who's responsible, right, for the ongoing development and support of that agent. That's also changing. So to me, that's it's more of a myth than reality, and it's where we need to be focusing our attention, is helping make that transition as effective as possible.
I couldn't agree more. And I think, it's something that, we've discussed. And, Paula, you guys are obviously, avid fans of Centrical, but we focus heavily as well on that team manager journey because, the team manager was always that role where, maybe you finished your shift on a Friday as a really great agent, then you're back in the hot seat as a manager on the Monday with, very little, wherewithal as to where you even start. I guess with that in mind, is there anything that both you guys are seeing from kind of an investment perspective of what's maybe being overinvested in and things that are maybe being ignored from a contact center, tech stack, AI investment, people investment?
I think, so for me, first of all, AI is just such a broad term. There's
Yeah,
not an easy answer to any of the things we're talking about today. It's such a broad term, but I think it's appreciating that it's a broad term and it's not a one size fits all solution, because there are many challenges and problems within our business environments that AI isn't the answer. There's something else that is the answer only. So I don't know. I think there's a lot of I still think there's a lot of overinvestment in the complicated thinking. I think there's a lot of overinvestment maybe in feeling the need to race to get all of this AI out there in various different forms. And the first and foremost thing that where more attention should be paid is get the strategy right. The first question I think we should always be asking is, what do you want it to solve? What is the problem you're solving, or what outcomes, maybe more importantly, what results, what difference do you want to get? And from there you work backwards. It's no
yeah,
different than when we talk about customer experience design in any sense. We always put the customer, the employee, that core goes at the heart of anything that we design. So you start there and you work backwards, not overinvest and trying to think that the AI has to fit into something. Because I know that in many an event that I've spoken at, including with you guys, I talked a lot about that kind of digital duct tape. If you've got bad processes, there's still going to be bad processes with or without AI. So
yeah.
you've got to get all of that done right. So if I was to change that a little and say, where should you overinvest your time? You can never over egg looking at your existing processes, determining whether those experiences actually work for you today, for your customers, the data quality, the routing, the workflow orchestration. That's where the real gains lie. And without fixing those foundations, new technology, whether it's AI or not, just adds more noise. So that's where we should be over investing our time.
I
Great. Yeah,
agree.
yeah,
I think the focus in terms of where we're not seeing enough investment is in looking at what's our vision, what's our strategy for CX, and then what are those key journeys that help kind of demonstrate our commitment to that brand experience we're seeking, and trying to identify, when we look at that, when we step into the customer's shoes, where are those use cases for AI and other types of technology, or where are the use cases to just, as Paula pointed out, improve the way we do our work processes, right? Instead of going out there saying I'm going to automate a certain type of inquiry or issue, you may be leveraging AI to collaboratively work with your human agents to solve certain steps within a journey, right? And that might be the best way to build up proficiency and expertise before you get broader with kind of how bold you want to be with handing over more and more of that interaction to AI.
yeah. Perfect. I couldn't agree more. And this chimes to something that I heard probably 2.5 years ago on the first webinar. I think I went on industry webinar about AI, and the first thing the guy said from whichever company it was AI will never fix a bad process. And I think that taps into what you've both kind of touched upon. With that in mind, and you taught there, Rick and Paul, you guys will be seeing this as well from, how you guys help with performance and performance measurement and management. How should leaders be rethinking performance management for 2026 if they do have AI in the picture? What kind of things should we be measuring, and what should maybe we be stopping measuring? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, great question, Ian. I still believe there's this, I know it's necessary, but there's this over reliance on things like deflection. Like, how much work did we shift from a human doing to a machine doing? There's still this lack of countervailing measures, things that help you understand more of a 360 view of, am I achieving my intended experience tied to, again, my vision and what I commit to customers when it comes to using our services. So some of the things that maybe our marketing department is more focused in on, like trying to understand loyalty measures, things like repeat purchase or service or engagement rates or retention and such. That should also be tied into my AI enablement or pipeline strategy here. Effort measures like contacts per case. Just because a machine's doing it and I found a way to automate it doesn't make it a better experience for the consumer if I'm still having to have multiple interactions, or feel like I'm forced to switch channels when when my expectation was I could have solved this where I began and such. Those things are still important. It's yes, you can do surveys and do NPS and good customer effort score, but there's some really core metrics that you should be doing in your over service design that still apply to your AI strategy as well, I believe.
Perfect.
Yeah,
And yeah, go ahead,
I
Paul. Yeah.
agree. I think let me add just a little bit to that because I suppose I challenge some things a little bit is we're still in a world where we look at things like AHT, right? Occupancy, because those were built for a world where efficiency was the same as value. That's what we equated value to be. But that's changed in this new world that we're building. That no longer exists. So when AI starts to take on those transactional tasks, the real differentiation is actually, have I cut the friction out? Is the quality and the resolution better than it was before? And does that interaction stay resolved? So yeah, I still think there's important measures. I think not everybody has moved away from more tactical KPI type measures, even into the customer effort or the FCR space. That's still a journey that some organizations and brands have to go to. But I do think it's important that we measure the efficiency and effectiveness of the AI and the technology that we've put in. Because if we look at the cognitive load in the agent and how much we've completed that entire journey for the customer, that helps us understand the accuracy of any AI guidance we've put partially or in full into that journey for that customer. And those metrics will tell us that not just the agent metrics, but the technical metrics will tell us, did we design it well? So, if the goal is outcome-based thinking, did we remove that effort? Have we improved trust? Have we prevented the next issue coming along? Those are all trailers of, was the AI designed in the right thing? And sometimes we still treat this like a tool. We hand it over and deploy it, when the iterative design and the constant looking back and improving will help that get better results over time. So I think as we go through this journey with AI, there's definitely a balance of different metrics to look at. And maybe at some point, the tipping point takes them to a different place, but there's probably parallel running for a little while.
Yeah, that's great. And one thing I wanted to kind of pick your brain about, Paul, working in the space that Capita work in, are you guys seeing more of a requirement from your customer to have more outcome-based results that maybe takes the focus away from classic KPIs like AHT and, bums on seats or whatever it might be? Are you seeing that at all?
If you were to ask me the one question that everybody asks every time they say, what does the future look like? It's that, how can we move to outcome-based pricing? How can we move to outcome-based results? It's front of mind of everybody, and it is the ultimate place that we are for once in this industry, in a place where that is something that can realistically be delivered, because AI and all of the data and insights and the speed of which we can see things change will allow us to get to that in a much more cohesive way and a trusting way that the data stands over it. Beforehand, we've tried to do that as an industry, but there were so many caveats wrapped around it. It never actually really took off at any big scale, right? So I think we're again on that journey. We have a road to travel. The ask is there, the desire is there, which is the important thing, and the intent from both the partner and the organization to move along to be contracting on an outcomes-based model is absolutely the way to go. I think depending on the maturity of data and how far along you are at any point in time with different components of AI, and that journey will depend on how far you can fully commit to full outcome-based modeling. But there's no reason why you can't have a hybrid. And there's no reason why you wouldn't want to run, again, the two in parallel so you can double check the data. Sometimes procurement teams and finance teams aren't quite as ready as we might want to be on the customer and the operational side to do that, because we are all about how we make experiences better. And sometimes that isn't as easy to track as in a spreadsheet, but it will get to the point that the maturity of that data is something you can stand over and be very trusting with, and it'll have mammoth impact for wider functions within the business.
Yeah, I love that. And Rick, anything from you on that one?
I think Paula's answer was comprehensive there, so I'm not going to tag on to that one. I think she nailed it.
Great. Well, I'm going to come back to you now, Rick, on this one. Something that you mentioned earlier about, the omni-channel experience, right? This is just sort of moving a little bit away from AI. And I know this is something that's, really something that we discussed earlier last week was, has the push for omni-channel experience actually improved CX, or has it added complexity, or has it took away some of the value for the customer? What's your thoughts and experience around that?
Thank you, Ian. Yeah, I think the push for omni-channel, you go back to kind of the spirit of it. I still think it's the right intention, right? It's the right goal in terms of trying to meet the customer where they are, right? They may have a preferred channel that they want to interact with, and trying to simplify the interaction as such that I don't need to move anywhere else to achieve resolution. So the spirit of that, I think, is still right. And it's still a great vision and North Star to have. The facts are that that's harder to pull off, right? That's harder to achieve. It still feels a bit out of reach. AI has made it easier on certain inquiry types, right, to be handled across multiple channels effectively. But the reality is, when you look at the totality of your business and the different reasons why consumers reach out and such, whether it's for policy reasons, fraud detection, whatever it might be, there are reasons why we can't do everything on every channel. So I still believe the spirit behind that is correct, and one we should maintain in mind that, hey, I want to make things easier for my customers, and I want to reduce that friction that they're going to experience. If I can't solve it on their chosen channel, I need to somehow make this seamless when I move them over to whatever channel is going to be capable of resolving their needs and such, right? So that spirit is correct. The reality of it is, we're still a ways off, and we just gotta work on trying to make it as easy as possible when that shift needs to happen.
Perfect.
Yeah. You want me to add into that, don't you?
Yeah.
I mean, here's what I think. I think choose your weapon. Choose your weapon before you go into battle. And I think, again, because you have an omni-channel strategy, which is absolutely the way to go, and Rick, you're bang on meeting your customer where they want to be. I think more importantly is being consistent where your customers behave and interact is also important. But it doesn't mean you have to be everywhere. Right, choose your channels for an omni-channel strategy and the ones that work for you, because it doesn't mean you're universal. The future isn't be everywhere all the time and do everything half-baked. Sometimes when brands narrow their focus to the right channels for the issues they're solving for the customer, then the CX improves. So when fraud can be done in a certain channel and done well, it improves. The complexity will drop. Customers ultimately just want you to answer their query and fix it first time. No one wants to keep coming back for more. So choose your weapon.
Love that. And something to add to that, it's great now that the industry fully understands the difference between multi-channel and omni-channel, because those two things were being used kind of interplaceable for years. And I think that
still are.
And still are. Yeah, don't get me started on that. Right, okay. So I guess one now, and I'd love to get both views for this, because as mentioned, Paul, you're still heavily involved in operations, and Rick, you're going to different organizations and looking at their operation. What's kind of separating top performing operations from the rest at the minute? What are you seeing that's kind of, you're thinking, that is kind of gold standard? Is there anything specific?
I'll go. So listen, I'm like a broken record on journey mapping and looking at processes, because that's, to me, is the differentiation. For me, the top performing organizations, and listen, everyone had a similar starting line, right? And we're starting to see scale build a little bit because a lot more use cases have been applied and we can now have proof points. But where have they proved more is when you learn from the early cases and apply that learning. But I think the top performers is where they're treating AI as a strategic partner to their long-term strategy, not a bolt-on, not something I have to do, not having the shiny tool in the box and ticking the box that it's done. And that comes from redesigning workflows around the AI, not forcing AI into the old process. It's investing in upskilling. It's bringing the front line into the inclusive part of the design in the front place or in the front stage, because our frontline agents are gold in terms of the knowledge they know. Because these are the guys that have single-handedly created some of the best workarounds for rubbish processes that we'll ever find. And it's the workaround that probably works best that we have to design into the new process moving forward. So we also need to teach our frontline and our managers and everything how to work with AI and not work around it. If we're going to really, systematically integrate AI into the new processes that we design moving forward in these new workflows, it should feel invisible. It should feel easy. It shouldn't feel like it's a piece of tech. So if we can remove that failure and friction and we augment and elevate, not replace as the intention, then you've got a pretty well-oiled machine. And I think that's what top performers are doing well.
Love that.
Ian, I would, on board with what Paula talked about, the focus on journeys there. The best performers in this space start with the journeys, not with their tools. Redesign the journeys first, and again, aligned with their vision for CX, and then align the tech to that and processes to that, right? Roles to that. There's decisions to be made. So that's key. In that both Paul and I have saying this, we're not seeing enough of this out there, to be honest with you, right? The other thing that is important is I still feel like there are companies that we're seeing that brands that you would know and trust that tend to trial and error with their deployment of AI in the customer experience. So either if they're stepping into a new space in the use of AI, or they have a planned significant expansion in it, they're kind of going out on their own without necessarily having the expertise internally on how to make that successful. So I know this sounds self-serving, but it's kind of like when you first learn how to ride a bike, someone was normally with you there to kind of help you do that effectively, right? Not forever, just that initial, first few, rides or so. That is a similar situation here with the deployment of AI. Get some outside help, a trusted advisor who's got the skinned knees and elbows, that's been through this and knows how to make this successful. You will build proficiency. You won't be connected to them for long, right? But you've got to get those first few cycles out successfully, achieving key measures that are important to the business, top line, bottom line, and key experiences for your customers and your agents and such. And again, you'll build the muscle memory, but we're still seeing a lot of organizations trying to do this on their own and fumbling with that, and then pulling back and then trying again. It's just not worth the expense, the time, the cost, the frustration to your agents or your customers or your business results.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really great point. We see this a lot around AI strategy, and we have an AI strategy, we have an AI budget, but we don't really know where we're going to deploy it or what we're going to deploy it on. So yeah, couldn't agree more with the sentiment on both those responses. Thanks for that, guys. I want to now move to the role of the team leader or supervisor or team manager. I'm going to call them team managers for the sake of it. As a leader, Paula, and also Rick, from what you're seeing, how are leaders rethinking the manager's role as AI enters that workflow? What are you seeing in terms of those guys being ready for managing the new operation or the kind of agents of 2026?
Yeah, I think the team manager role is the one that gets so little recognition of just how tough it is. We ask people on the front line to do a very, very difficult job because there's few customer support teams now that are getting contacts coming in to say, hey, I'm having a great day, how are you doing? There's a problem of some sort that has to get solved, and they can get very gnarly and they can get difficult, and they can be dealing with vulnerable customers. It's a really tough job to do, and we ask them to do that with more and more technology, thinking we're helping them because we've got a cool idea and here's more stuff and you'll love it, but it's more and more things to do, more and more pressure and things to think about. And the team manager has to manage that on, say, 10, 15, sometimes 20 people. They are expected to coach and improve performance. But what we actually ask them to do is to sit in front of a computer all day and look at data and assume that they understand how to translate that data into something meaningful, which can drive the performance. I'm Irish and I say it's quite an Irish thing to say. It's a very Irish thing to ask them to do. So I think there's a real need to rethink the role of the team manager. And just like I talked earlier about including the frontline in your design process, categorically get your managers and your team leaders in there, thinking about how difficult is my role and what needs to be true in order for that to be unlocked and for the capacity and the capability that I really can bring to the table to be unlocked to do my job in the best way. But then look at the skills that they don't have. You don't hire a data analyst or a data scientist. You've hired a team leader who can coach. We don't need them to be data scientists, but we do need to teach them how to deal with intelligence and analytics in a way that's easy. So we now have access to all of this great technology and AI to free them up from the administrative drag that they're in so they can actually coach. But it means us positioning data in front of them in a way that is easy to interpret, that they can use and translate into their business, that they can bifurcate down different levels of their business and back upwards, and get them then on their feet and on their floor doing them. So if we can supercharge their intelligence, it adds so much more value to our business. They'll also be so much happier in the roles that they do. But we forget that the role of a team manager also has almost the unspoken pastoral care for their team as well. Well-being, digital literacy of their teams. How are you doing? It's a really complicated job. And usually it's quite a young workforce that is doing it as well. So we have a duty of care to show up and help and mentor that layer in our organization so much more than I think we've maybe done in the past. But now we're in a position to do it better.
Love that. Yeah, couldn't agree more. And I've been in that position myself way back when, like I said, finished my shift on the Friday as a pretty good agent, and then started as a team leader on the Monday and just didn't even know where to start. And it was that whole thing of you were busy, but you were probably busy doing the wrong things. So yeah, I love the fact that we're removing the noise. We don't expect them to be data analysts, but how can we make them more effective and impactful kind of coaches and collaborators? Because that's really what we want them to be doing. Rick, anything to add on that one?
Yeah, I think that's it's a key point. And I know the focus here is on the team manager role, but I would say keep moving up the chain. The levels of leadership, we're probably not doing enough to prepare them to be effective during this transition. The focus has been very heavily on deployment of technology that is customer facing, or deployment of technology that's assisting the agent in some manner, right? To be more effective. We haven't done enough to prepare leadership at its various levels to be effective at doing just that, at leading, right? In this evolving world. So completely on board with Paula's points there. They have access to power tools now that just because they have access doesn't mean they know how to use those effectively, right? And how when the data comes together, they've got things coming over from training simulations, they've got operational performance data. What's the best way for them to leverage this in this kind of collaborative world of digital and human delivery of service to continue to move their teams along and provide inputs, or hopefully even more than that, participate in the fine-tuning of the technologies themselves and how they continue to support operations and the delivery of the customer experience as well.
Perfect. Love that. And a nice follow-up question. This one's a little bit more kind of, let's imagine. But if either of you or both of you could redesign a contact center from scratch for 2026, where would it start? What would it look like? What would you measure? Let's have a chat about that.
Well, and I would argue that's exactly what we're doing. We are designing for 2026. We're designing for 25, and I think this isn't a one and done moment in time with AI. I think the pace of change and the evolution of technology and the sophistication of technology, it's fascinating. It's absolutely fascinating for me. So it's keeping coming at us, and we have to be choice, got to choose our weapons, got to be choice in the things that we have that we want to deploy out into our workforce, give them enough time at the embed, but also be very mindful that things are constantly evolving at a pace of change that we've never been used to before. So we are very actively redesigning the contact center for 2026, and it looks different for, I'm in the outsource space, it looks different for every client, it looks different for different verticals. We're building at Capita, we're building what I would call hybrid intelligence contact centers. And that just means that for us, there are organizations that say, hey, we're now a tech company. We don't say that. We've come from a place where we'd say it's human in the loop, it's human first. Actually, it's AI handling the orchestration, the complexity, the orchestration and how things talk to each other, the routing, the summarization, it's surfacing all of the insights and the intelligence, whilst our humans, our really valuable workforce, are focusing on the moments that really require the judgment, the quality, the empathy, the problem solving. So it's that hybrid model. So I think that changes the shape a little bit of what you have. Maybe there's more smaller teams than you've had before, and they have the ability to be supported by AI co-pilots. There's maybe fewer traditional queues that we would see in IVRs and in ticketing system, and a shift towards more proactive engagement, push content, push SMS, asynchronous messaging, instead of just reacting to inbound volume, and when can we handle the spikes, and constantly burning the workforces to always be on whenever it's unpredicted volume. So I think it helps us get much more in control, but much more proactive out with customers, and that allows us to have the space to be creative in how we get knowledge built up and engagement with customers in a way that is much more fulfilling for what their needs are as well. Because as consumers, it's speed and it's answers. That's what we want. We want more time in our lives. Contact centers can help unlock that.
Yeah, love that. That's great. Yeah. And Rick, anything from you?
On the and thank you, Paula. But it's been wonderful to hear your perspectives on this. On the agent side, as Paula was speaking, it's a different skill set nowadays. So I have to recruit for that. I have to train for that. I have to empower that. In operations, from, as was mentioned already, the higher complexity of inquiries that are staying on my lap, right, that I have to handle, from the problem solving skills that I maybe didn't need before. I don't have the easy inquiries any longer, so I don't have that mental break in the day. So what does that do to my stress level? So what does that mean from a workload capacity? What does that mean from the type of person that works well in that environment? Someone who's very comfortable with not just leveraging tech from, I'm going to say traditionally from a CRM perspective, where we're just logging things in or so, but where tech's actually engaged with me, trying to help me deliver the service and such, those things. And then the whole data analytics piece of it, that's impacting the agent and the leadership roles as well. Those things require us to revisit what are we looking for to fill these roles, and how do we prepare those that we bring on board or those that we have already to enable them to continue moving along. The other side of that is, they're in this ship with us together, and there's new roles being unlocked by the continued evolution of tech. So those career paths are changing as well, right? There are some things that are not as promising as before, and there are others that are new and opening. So how do we get our agents engaged and enable and grow their, evolve their role, so that they are not just providing feedback, but actually helping us identify use cases, design those use cases, deploy those use cases, refine those use cases on this collaboration between machine and humans in delivering service. So there's a planning mindset, that's a very intentional planning mindset that needs to be had by leaders to kind of make sure that we're doing that effectively.
I would add, though, I think, and both of us have taken very much a people perspective on that too, but we shouldn't ignore the fact that it is a whole new technology infrastructure that's being built into the future as well. And that tech stack needs to be built for adaptability, just because of the pace of change what we have. We've come from a problem as an industry where we've got a lot of legacy tech and organizations with bolt-ons and lots of those systems not talking to each other. So the new stack that is being built needs to be built for observability, for adaptability. So it's around the customer behavior, so that we're not back in this endless patches and workarounds and upgrades in another 3 years' time. So where investment is being done anew, be mindful of things which are scalable and for the future in a very secure way.
Yeah, and from a kind of working on the tech side of that, Paul, we're hearing that a lot more, that customers really want to partner. What are we going to be doing in a year's time? What we're going to be doing in 6 months' time? Not just, we'll give you the tech, we'll sell you the tech, and then you might get an upgrade or new functionality in 3 months. It really is all about the partnership. I want to ask one more final question. I don't know if this is if this might be a little bit kind of controversial, but it might get people thinking. Are there any industry, you guys are all over, what's going on in the industry now and obviously planning for the future. Is the one industry prediction you think won't hold up in 2026 that you hear and you think, nah, I don't think that's going to go anywhere? Anything specific?
Sometimes I think there's still a little bit of a perception that AI is a chatbot, and the chatbot will do everything and solve everything. To me, that's not going to happen. They'll improve. If it's designed right, it'll improve. If it's not, we'll have major issues. But customers still crave human interaction, nuance, and reassurance. And there are a certain type of query that happens that customers need support on that still requires that human engagement. And when a customer feels they're not sure if the chatbot has answered that correctly, that's exactly why in yesteryear we didn't see, voice volumes drop whenever chat went in, because there was that trust of, did it really give me the answer? Did I need to double check that? So mine would be that automation won't solve everything and kill the contact center, and it won't alone win loyalty of customers.
Perfect. Love
Ian,
that.
Ian, I'm going to go another direction with that question, and you as the moderator can bring me back. So the thing that I think we need to start thinking about, and we do see some movement in this space, but I'm going to say not enough because it's rapidly changing, is the expansion and capability that we see from customers' use of AI. So we've been talking this whole time about how AI is used in the customer support operation or in a customer-facing role to deliver services. You and I, as consumers, are using AI more and more in our daily lives. And with the expanded capabilities that you see in your personal AI assistants, like Siri, like Alexa, like Gemini, what I expect to see in the next 12 to 24 months is that playing a role on my behalf as a consumer in reaching out to customer support organizations to have this whole support inquiry occurring. So we've been doing it to the consumers with AI deployed there. In 2026, we're going to begin to see the other direction happening. And as CX leaders that are over our strategies and operations, we really need to begin preparing for this, having my Gemini reach out on behalf of me to present whatever my need or question or inquiry is, and play a role in me as a consumer interacting with the support department.
Yeah, I mean, we're already hearing a lot of, the new term of agentic being bandied around a lot. There's a lot of confusion of people calling generative agentic and vice versa and all of that. So, but it's not just a new term, it's the next level of capability. And that will be real autonomous decision making that will happen in the background when tech talks to tech and processes can happen. And that's a whole different ball game altogether. That's really exciting. And I think that really changes the dynamic of this industry altogether, but it will be a two-way street. So Rick, you're right. The customer will be coming back in. There's a lot of trust in the customer, but customers are more trusting of technology than we sometimes we should be, because it is about our data and its decisioning being done. And there's a whole hornet's nest that has to be worked through, which is why I keep coming back to journeys and process documentation and mapping, because of that. Yeah, right. Boy, oh boy. Will 2027 either look great or look shocking. Right.
Yeah, Ian, when you brought up at the start of this conversation about your use and using leftovers or whatever it was, and to come up with some new meal that is now popular, your trust in whichever AI assistant you used in that's a growing consumer sentiment. We're growing more trusting of what AI can do. And that next phase is, well, can you just reach out to my bank or to my whatever provider and tell them or ask them this, right? That desire to have it act on my behalf is going to be something that's going to drive more change in 26. Yeah.
Agree. Couldn't agree more. And I think we could talk forever, and there's so many questions in the chat that we're not going to get to, but we'll respond to everyone, via email over the next few days. Really want to thank you, Deanna. Would you like to just share the last few slides? I know that we do want to capture just a couple of things. First of all, we do have a winner to the raffle, which is Jet Panopio. If I'm butchering your name, I do really apologize. And also, just if you go to the survey slide, please, Deanna. We will be also asking you guys to fill out this survey, share your key takeaways, give any feedback on the content, on the speakers. If you want to, follow up with any of the guys or with myself and the team, then please let us know. As I mentioned at the start, your input for these sessions and feedback is really crucial. I just want to spend the last 10 seconds now just saying, we knew we were going to run out of time. That's always a good thing. Paula, Rick, really, really appreciate you guys jumping on the call today in your really hectic schedules and giving insight from different angles. But, with that, I think there was some really joined up themes and joined up thinking, between the responses that you gave. So I really want to thank you for helping out with today. I want to wish everyone a really lovely rest of December, happy holidays, and hopefully we'll see you all in 2026 and how your contact centers are evolving. Thanks very much, guys. Have a great day.
Fantastic. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.